Hello and welcome to a very special episode of our Out Loud Microsoft podcast, coming to you live from Microsoft Ignite here in very sunny but also very hot and muggy Florida. As always, I am joined by our Microsoft expert from Modality Systems, Tom Arbuthnot. Tom, how are you today?
Yeah.
How are you finding Ignite so far?
Yeah, good. We're into day 2, so it's been really busy already, even though after one day. But yeah, lots of news dropped and big day again today.
I have to say I was slightly overwhelmed by the size of Ignite, but as you can see, well, you won't be able to see this if you're on the podcast, but if you're watching the video stream, you can see we're in a very fancy special Microsoft studio to record this, which is a particular treat.
Yeah, it's been a bit stepped up for Ignite, so the kind guys at Microsoft have given us a bit of a studio. We're actually in the middle of Community Central, which is where all the community meetups are, and this is also the same floor that is the expo. So the 30,000 people, you can see how busy it is that you can't see from one end to the other. It really is a big event.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on Ignite a bit. As you said, 30,000 people. I think I saw in a tweet from you the other day, it's over the size of a small town in terms of the expo halls and everything.
Yeah, the convention centres here are just crazy. You're walking from one end to the other is an hour walk. It really is a serious thing. But you need that space to deal with all the sessions, all the breakouts, all the community meetups. You're feeding all these people. There's drinks and events. So it's Orlando. We've done it here a couple of years. It's a great venue for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think yesterday I did 30,000 steps, which I needed to walk off all the food I ate from around Microsoft.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how much you walk. Ignite net is calorie positive if you're out having drinks and dinners for sure.
It definitely is. So I think we better start on the real content, and I don't think there's anywhere else to start apart from Microsoft Teams, which is just, it's been one of the most commonly mentioned platforms, phrases from the entire event.
Yeah, definitely. It's been big news. The biggest news really has been about the growth and Microsoft kind of positioning it more and more as part of their Microsoft 365 stack.
Yeah. I put an article on the website that was part of Microsoft's advanced press release, which is Teams is the fastest growing business app for Microsoft ever.
Yeah.
Which sounds pretty incredibly impressive.
Yeah. So this is where the people watching on video will know that we cheat now because we've got our laptops in front of us. So I've got my notes for the numbers here. So from the keynote yesterday, which Laurie Wright ran, the numbers they mentioned, these are monthly active users. So these are not enabled users numbers, these are real active users. It's 329,000 companies that are using it, 87 of the Fortune 100, and 60 of those customers are 10,000 users plus. So this is not proof of concept stuff, these are big numbers. They also mentioned Accenture as a reference as having 100,000 users, active monthly users plus. So, we're getting the numbers up in these big customers where it's getting some real usage, which is exciting.
No, it's absolutely incredible, isn't it? And there's been so much talk of Teams, but firstly in the keynotes, it's been one of the most mentioned platforms. It's a really huge proposition for Microsoft.
Yeah, the growth is feeding that, and Microsoft more and more. If you looked at the keynote for Microsoft Teams, it wasn't really the keynote for Microsoft Teams. It was the keynote for modern workplace and Microsoft 365 collaboration. So we talked about primarily Microsoft Teams. There was a bit of Outlook in there. There was a bit of SharePoint in there. There was a bit of Yammer in there. And the story is generally Yammer and SharePoint are integrating and working nicer and nicer with Teams. But the point is, it's a Microsoft 365 collaboration play. So things like Microsoft Search are going to enable some such scenarios. That the data leakage prevention is across multiple Microsoft products. And that's really where Microsoft is starting to differentiate in the market, is they're not just a collaboration platform. You've got Cisco WebEx Teams and you've got Microsoft Teams. It's a very different proposition. You've got Microsoft collaboration. Teams is kind of the star of that, but absolutely Exchange is in there, SharePoint is in there, Yammer is in there as well.
Yeah, that's interesting you should mention that. I was talking to some of the analysts in the media centre this morning, and they were saying that is the fundamental difference between competitor propositions, whether that be Cisco
you can say them.
Whether that be Cisco, but Microsoft can offer that integration across the suite of Office applications, which, let's face it, are used massively across the world.
Yeah, the dominant platform, absolutely. So that's where Microsoft have this unique edge and can do some really unique things because they have the stack, not just a point play. They can do some really clever stuff.
And we've also, there's a huge amount of new features discussed. I know I was tweeting about, we saw the background blur, which we've talked about before, but we saw that live on stage, and we saw loads of other features that we've been talking about before in action, the translation features,
Yeah.
which I'm really looking forward to when I converse with all my Korean contacts, which I have a huge network
UC
of.
Today Global.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of the features, if you're a podcast listener, you will have heard about these. We talk about stuff really early. So background blur was a feature that's now generally available. What that means is all the tenants have now got that feature. The meeting recording in the cloud is now generally available. They showed some features on mobile. Just scroll down my list here. So things like annotation of images is now generally available. Mobile companion scenario where you can basically be in a meeting but load your mobile up and use it as a companion device in the meeting. So you can load your PowerPoint from your mobile, walk around the room and talk and flick
I
your
didn't
slides.
see that,
Yeah,
actually.
so
I don't know how I missed that. That's very poor journalism for me.
yeah, it's quite a nice practical scenario. Like, you walk into meeting rooms, you're presenting with 4 or 5 people. You can, walk around or sit on your mobile, or you can be remote and present into the meeting in a really nice way as well.
Yeah, because I've thought about that before. Effectively, a mobile is a supporting device, and if you're on a desktop or whatever, why would you not be utilising it? I haven't looked at that, so I'll have to go and dig that out.
Yeah, it's a big part of the Microsoft Teams story is increasingly both mobile first, and we'll talk about some of the new scenarios they talked about later, but also using mobile to full effect. So using Bluetooth beaconing, using the mobile as a companion device, really making the most of the fact everybody has a little computer in their pocket.
And so most of those features we've discussed on the podcast before, because we knew they were coming. But there have been some new preview features that we're going to be looking ahead to.
Yeah, definitely. The big one was live meetings. So for those who pay careful attention, Skype Broadcast is the old name for this. On Skype for Business you could do this, now you can do this on Teams. And it's where you schedule a meeting just like a regular meeting, but it gets broadcast out to up to 10,000 people. So really scaling up, and it's not a interactive collaborative meeting, it's a one-to-many kind of broadcast. So the scenarios we see in enterprise are things like, big customers that have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of users. A regional lead might easily have 6,000, 7,000 reports. They can now, with no external cost, with no crazy setup, do a broadcast to their entire team, have it recorded and saved in the cloud as well. And it's making that kind of scenario way more cost effective and way more accessible to regular businesses.
And those are becoming, I think, with the rising importance that's put on company culture.
Yeah.
Things like team broadcasts and monthly updates are absolutely massive within enterprise, aren't they, in terms of updating on everyone on what's going on in the business, what the strategy is. So that's a really useful feature for teams.
Yeah, and it's just in the box. So typically that scenario today, if you don't have that, you have to go out to an external company, you pay them to do an event coordination, you pay them to do the broadcast. Microsoft, because of their scale and their cloud, can just bundle this stuff in as part of the offer. So, it's really making this stuff kind of a complete solution. The same tool I'm using to meet my direct reports and have a collaborative meeting, I just click a drop down and I go from a Teams meeting to a live meeting, and suddenly I'm able to broadcast to thousands of people.
Yeah, and were there any other major preview features that we should be looking at?
Yeah, it didn't really get talked about in the keynote because it's a bit techie, but good for our audience. The APIs previewed. So these are APIs that are going to allow more interaction with Microsoft Teams in terms of media and calling. So giving us the opportunity to have contact center scenarios where contact centers can directly interoperate with Microsoft Teams, so add users from meetings, take away users from meetings, which enables some new telephony scenarios, but also more and more Teams becoming a platform where we can build solutions around it. So you might build a specific, say, healthcare scenario where you want to pull different people into a meeting dynamically. Those APIs are going to allow you to spin up Teams meetings, add people, control the media, all using Microsoft Teams as a foundation, but with your own application over the top.
And that's something Microsoft have been doing a lot more, isn't it, in terms of that interoperability and offering businesses more customization options?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, the first thing they did actually was give interop for standards-based video. So Polycom announced this week they're GAing their cloud video interop platform, which means you can take like a standards-based endpoint, so a Cisco or whatever else, and connect it to a Microsoft Teams meeting. BlueJeans and Pexip are about a month away from GAing a similar solution, but that API story was initially just for partners to create. Now it's for anybody who wants to develop a line of business solution can get access to these APIs in preview.
And you mentioned healthcare before. One of the things you were explaining to me, while Tom does a very diligent preparation of me before the podcast to make sure I vaguely know what's going on, was the expansion of Teams across different vertical markets.
Yeah, this is really interesting. So of the news, lots of this stuff we knew was coming. This is genuinely new stuff. So Microsoft increasingly across the entire org are taking a more vertical focus. So it used to be Microsoft would kind of do 80% and then the customers or the partners would fill a gap. They're being much more active to meet business requirements in specific verticals now. So for Teams, that was education first. So education got a really quick uptake in Microsoft Teams. Student-teacher interaction. Obviously, students tend to be a younger age group, so tend to be more into this new world of working out loud.
And chat apps,
collaboration, chat, mobile first, iPads, all that kind of stuff. So Microsoft went and built specific scenarios that focus on education. So things like checking in and out assignments, like speaking to students and teachers. So it's still Microsoft Teams, but customized for that scenario. And at Ignite, in the demos, they had two new scenarios. So one is kind of first-line workers, which is basically Microsoft's term for kind of retail, mass, front-of-house type workers. And in that scenario, they had a schedule builder. So you could do your schedule for the week. The manager can see all the different people. You can do shift swaps. You can see who's on your shift. So really, unusually for Microsoft, or the old Microsoft, they're focusing in on industry vertical, saying what are your business problems and how can we help customize Teams for that scenario.
And it's massive, isn't it? Because collaboration has always been traditionally maybe pigeonholed to the design, concept worker, technical teams.
knowledge worker traditionally.
Knowledge worker, that's what I was looking for. That was the actual phrase I was looking for. But you're absolutely right, opening it up to whole realms of different workforce, it would be massive as we go forward.
And the other one they demoed was healthcare, and healthcare as an industry is just massive. I think in Satya's keynote he said it's something like 18% of the US economy is based around healthcare.
Wow.
So in his keynote he was mentioning how Microsoft, if they can positively impact that industry, they can positively impact the whole economy. And that's the same around the world. The NHS in the UK, the biggest employer I think we've got. So anything Microsoft can do to make that space more productive is a real positive impact for everybody. And in that scenario, it was all about mobile first. So we know, from experience, lots of people in both retail and in healthcare are using non-compliant consumer-based chat products. They have a business requirement to communicate really quickly, to share files, to share photos, to check their shifts, and they're not actively trying to not use the corporate standard, but they want something that works for them. It has to be mobile first, it has to be responsive, it has to share photos, and so they typically go to consumer stuff. What Microsoft are offering is a mobile solution that does all of that, but is HIPAA compliant, but is GDPR compliant, all those good compliancy standards, but still in an accessible, usable mobile experience.
I think that's pretty much it for the Teams new. I mean, that took the absolute bulk of the bulk of the podcast. And before we go, I did want to say, Tom, Skype for Business. I heard someone mention
Skype for what?
Well, that's exactly what I thought. I mean, I saw someone on Twitter mention the other day. It has almost been noticeable in its absence. I mean, just from a press perspective, we got a big press release before, a 28-page press release. You Control F. No Skype in the whole 28-page, and I think I heard it mentioned once in the keynote. So,
I mean, it's very obvious. This happened last year as well. I think there was 1 or 2 Skype for Business sessions last year at Ignite. There's one this year. The one session this year is about Skype for Business Server 2019.
Yeah, which is obviously the big news.
But it's obvious where Microsoft's mind is and where they want people focused. They want people focused on Teams. The news is the same as before. There is no end of life date for Skype for Business Online or for Skype for Business Server, but absolutely Microsoft want you to be trying to go to Teams first. They believe Teams is the right platform. So Server is very close to being generally available. There's a new version of Exchange Server, a new version of Skype for Business Server, and a new version of SharePoint Server. The reality is there are still, hundreds of thousands of seats on those server products. So they're not going away, they're not being taken away, but increasingly Microsoft are getting more and more kind of blunt and blatant about they believe the cloud is the future. If you have an enterprise reason to run Skype for Business, that's great. Go ahead and use that. So a classic one for us is compliance recording. In finance, people need to record all their modalities, all their meetings. That can today still only be done on Skype for Business server. So it's not going away. The new version of server will be supported until 2023 for mainstream and 2025 for extended support. But don't expect lots of sessions with Microsoft promoting that stuff. It's the old world they are maintaining and looking after, and they appreciate customers are on a, big customers multi-year transition. It's just a reality, but they want to get people thinking about and moving that way now, so that in the future they're cloud first as much as possible.
Yeah, I think as you said, there's always going to be a requirement for certain customers to have the on-premise Skype services, but I think in one of the keynotes, you're right, that Microsoft are getting more and more blunt about it.
Yeah.
He said if you're looking at online, look at Teams. It's that straightforward.
And there are some things that are not in the kind of marketing messaging, but some subtle things. So for example, on Friday there's a session about being on Skype for Business server but using Microsoft Teams meetings. So that's a scenario where you might take the best of both worlds. So you've invested a lot of money in enterprise voice telephony globally in your environment. You've got the gateways, you've got the servers. For whatever business or commercial or depreciation reason that's not going away, there'll be a new opportunity to do your meetings on Microsoft Teams even though you're homed on Skype for Business. So taking some of that feature benefit of plug-in-less meeting join, great mobile experience for meetings, but still leveraging Skype for Business's telephony platform. So it's if you look at a glance, it's like Skype for Business is clearly not Microsoft's focus, and that's true. But if you're a customer committed to that roadmap and that platform, there is a new server version, there is stuff happening. It's just not going to make the kind of media, the keynotes, the press release.
Absolutely, it's not going to grab my attention like Teams.
No, and you look at the Teams usage, you can see that Microsoft are backing a winner for individual customers. There'll always be a business reason to do one thing or another, but at scale 87 of the FTSE 100 shows people are getting on the Teams bandwagon for sure in a big way.
And just finally, Tom, what are you looking forward to for the rest of the week in particular, Ignite?
So there's loads more Microsoft Teams sessions. There is a Skype Business Server session that I'll try and hit just to know what's going on.
I will be looking forward to attending that.
Yeah, it's worth going to understand what the messaging is.
I'd just like to hear Skype. It's just exciting to me.
Yeah. Also, I've got a session on Wednesday and a session on Friday, so a couple of speaking sessions. But other than that, it's mainly, to be honest, all the sessions get streamed and recorded. It's mainly catching up with everybody. As I was saying off camera to you, some of these people you only see once a year. It's a big event. So catching up with everybody is really my priority.
Well, I have to tell all the listeners and viewers, if you walk around Ignite with Tom, it's very much like walking around your hometown with your mum, where she knows everyone, and every 2 minutes Tom is stopping to talk to someone.
Yeah,
you are the hub of the Microsoft communication collaboration.
That might be stretching it a bit, but there are a lot of friends here and everybody knows everybody. So yeah, for sure. I love Ignite for that. We're actually having, straight after this, a community meetup, and that's an opportunity for product group, MVPs, and just people in the community to come and talk about Teams. And those things are the most valuable to me, that customer interaction, that product group interaction, and all peers talking together about Teams and the bigger Microsoft 365 story.
Yeah, well, it's my first time here. It's an absolutely great
event. Coming back next year?
Absolutely. If Microsoft will have me. It depends really how this podcast goes. But I've really enjoyed myself. As you said, the community feel is really one of the key things. If you want any more information, listeners or viewers, head to uctoday.com. There's loads of information there. As always, Tom, on your blog, it's tomtalks.uk.
Yeah, tomtalks.uk. I've got a roundup of the week's news going up towards the end of the week, so there'll be one blog post that will give you everything that happened this week. That's always my goal, is to try and summarise things. I'm also doing daily videos on LinkedIn and Twitter, so you can hit those for just a 2-minute summary of all the news of the day. Yeah,
I was going to say, follow us on social media as well, because there's always
there's a lot going on. Yeah.
But we'll get this podcast out as soon as possible. But thank you so much for listening or watching, both of us.
Great, thank you.